Well, g'day. Yeah, a little bit dark. I'm out bush, so you know it is what it is. This probably won't get uploaded until Sunday anyway, so I suppose it doesn't really matter. A lot to talk about. Today's been quite good. Well, shithouse, but good in a way. So it started off. I was feeling very anxious, angry. You know, it's just one of those things where, I think getting out here has been screaming to me for quite a while. So yeah, I just thought I'd bugger it. I'm going to get what I have to get done and get out here. The silly part is that I woke up at 5:15 this morning, and I normally get up at 6, and I was wide awake. So I thought, screw this for a joke. I'm just getting up, getting what I need to get done, and let's get the hell out of here. And then got a call from my cousin. We've been trying to arrange something, and it finally came through. So he popped around, and we went and dealt with it. And he's happy, I'm happy. So that all kind of worked out really, really well. And then after he left, basically jumped in the car and came straight out here. Dropped off the gas bottles. I've still got one that I have to take back to the service station. But yeah, dropped all that stuff off, got the car emptied out. And then we'd spoken, he was actually camped out here this week as well. He's on school holidays, he's a teacher, so he got off work and brought the kids out along with a few mates, and they camped out here for about 4 nights, and he was telling me where I could get some more firewood. So as soon as I got here, I dumped all my stuff, grabbed the chainsaw, went out to where he said, and sure enough, there was a pile of firewood. That's what's burning at the moment. So yeah, sorry, this is going to be a bit out of focus. It's not my usual type of video, and it is dark, or it is getting dark. Yeah, and once I cut all the firewood, got in the car, came back, saw a couple of roos. He reckons he saw about 100 out here, but he went spotlighting, so you generally see more at night in the spotlight than what you do during the day. But I knew there was quite a few out here because I'd seen a few groups over the past couple of weeks, and it was only a matter of time before someone saw more than what I was seeing, and that's people who go out at night with this big light, handheld light. Yeah, he saw a fox. He saw what he thought was a cat, a wild cat, but he left him alone because he had the kids in the back and a few people from Adelaide that didn't particularly like pew pews, so he didn't worry about them. There is quite a few sheep out here, but I think they'll be fine. I know there's other family out here at the moment, because he told me there was. As to whether they're still here or not, I don't know. But I guess we'll find out later tonight after it's gone dark. So I know there was a little present out in the back paddock that was clearly done on purpose to bring other things in. So I'll be fascinated to see whether there's any spotlighting going on tonight. But yeah, that's been pretty much my day. I'm absolutely knackered at the moment. So I listen to Canadian Prepper. I do that every day. That situation is clearly not getting any better. And to put it mildly, I think most of us are waiting for the fuel prices to actually go up. So I would keep that in mind, and yeah, because I know they've come back down again, but I'd expect that they would go up if this keeps going on at the rate it's going on. So Russia and Ukraine are still at it, hammer and tongs. So yeah, I don't know where this is all going to end up, but personally, at this stage, I don't really care, to be honest. It's not affecting me here at the moment, and so I'm just going to let it go. Tonight is pretty much a clear sky. There is a bit of cloud coming in, but I'm expecting a lot of rain tomorrow, and I'd imagine it'll probably start before I even wake up. So I've put some timber underneath my canopy, so it remains dry, and that's why I've got the fire going now, so I can get a bed of coals. And if I can keep that bed of coals going all night, then it should be fine. I'll just load up the fire pit before I go to bed. It's quite safe. It's got a lid. I'll put the lid on, and it'll be fine. And if there's enough coals tomorrow morning, I should be able to get it going again with the dry timber that I've currently got under the canopy. And that's the way I've kind of set it up. I'm not overly fussed about tomorrow night, because apparently it'll come clear again, but we'll see. It might still be cloudy, it might still be cold, but I've got the clothing ready to basically go with that. And again, I apologise about the fact that you can't really see my face. So after Canadian Prepper, I listened to Chance's video about salespeople, which was about an hour and 40 minutes long, one of his longer ones, while he was watering. And yeah, he brought up a few subjects, I suppose. The one that keeps coming back to mind is this whole Homestead versus Prepper. And I think I probably need to talk about it, because at the end of the day, there is a very distinct difference between prepping, homesteading, and an actual farm. At the moment, I'm camped on a farm. It was basically bought in around about 1950. And the guy that bought it basically cleared the land, but he left quite a lot of scrub left, knowing full well that he was going to have livestock on it. He also bought it to crop it to a certain extent, but that kind of didn't work out, because the soil here is basically dead. It's a mixture of sand and limestone. Obviously, I've spoken about it before. There used to be an ocean over the top, and as the ocean receded back to where the ocean is now, it created sand dunes, and those sand dunes are pretty much what I'm camped on right now. So these sand dunes are probably anywhere from around about 60,000 to probably close to, I don't know, 100 to 200,000 years old. Yes, there's vegetation growing on it, but it is very specific to this region. These trees would not do well in clay soil, is all I'm going to say. And so you very rarely see them growing in it. It is a farm though, and because the soil's so bad, he wanted to diversify, which every farmer does. Farmers don't ruin land. They're very much a conservator of land. They move their livestock around different paddocks, because They don't want to get erosion and things like that on their property. So they do move livestock around. They rotate livestock. There's a lot more involved in farming than what a lot of people actually understand, and especially if you're a livestock farmer. You can't just have the cows grazing in one paddock for the rest of their lives, because they'll finish that paddock in about, I don't know, 2 weeks. And then you virtually end up with mud if you're in a clay area, or just raw sand, which is no good for cattle at all. So they do rotate through different paddocks. I mean, this farm is large enough that they can pretty much leave certain gates open, and the sheep have got pretty much the run of the entire property. So, or at least half of it, because the road cuts it in half. When it comes to actual, what we term as broadacre cropping, which is pretty much cropping where you've got, say, 200 or 300 acres or more, it becomes a completely different story, because basically that's when you start getting into the heavy machinery. So, the heavy tractors, the heavy sprayers, the heavy rollers, the attachments that chew up the dirt, that plant the seeds, etc., etc. And then at the end of the season, once it's all grown, you then need to buy a combine harvester, which for the better part of $2 million, because they're not a cheap machine to buy. So they cost on average about $1 to $2 million. And most farmers will run them 24/7 during cropping season. It is still reasonably light. The phone doesn't pick it up. And the fire is still going. So they basically run them 24/7. Why? Because, and when I say 24/7, I literally mean 24/7. These things are running 24 hours a day. They get filled up with fuel while they're moving, while they're cropping. They get emptied while they're cropping. They don't stop. And normally the whole family gets involved. So the wife will do a 6-hour stint. The husband will do a 6-hour stint. Anywhere from around about probably 12 years old, they're doing 6-hour stints in the combine to keep the thing running. Meanwhile, in the supporting vehicle, which is normally a tractor with a big bin, that's basically taking it off to where the semi-trailers are parked, which basically, so while the combine's out in the paddock getting its bin filled, the tractor is basically driving back to the semi-trailer to empty its bin into the semi-trailer. So the truck can then go to the grain silo to sell the grain. And then once the truck has emptied and finished at the silo, it then drives back, waiting for the next load. And it just keeps rolling around the clock until the whole farm is basically cropped. And that's what a working farm is. And so you basically have only around about 3 months of the year where the farm is in a lull to a certain point. But during that lull, that's when the fences are repaired, that's when the vehicles are maintained, when they're serviced, when any broken parts are repaired, when the tractors are serviced. A farmer is lucky if they get maybe 2 weeks off a year. And to be honest with you, most of the guys around this district actually go fishing. Because the last thing they want to do on their holidays is see a bloody farm, because that's where they spend 99% of their time. The lull is also the time period where you're ordering the next year's seeds, you're ordering the next year's fertilizers. It's a full-time job, and it's bloody hard work, because if the combine breaks down in the middle of a paddock at 2 o'clock in the morning, someone has to fix it. because if they get rain, that can ruin the whole crop, and their value can go from, say, $15 a ton down to about 4 if you get water on it. So, and I'm just making up those figures. I don't know what it actually is. So, you kind of get the idea. It is a big enterprise, generally done by a family, and I mean the whole family, and including any brothers, sisters, whatever happens, because normally at least, they've got a couple of farms and they've got to get it all done, so they don't stop. Now, funnily enough, most of these farms have a few chickens. Yes, they might have a bit of a garden where they might grow some food or something like that, but it's certainly not enough to live on. It's more of a situation where you're throwing little bits and pieces into the food you're buying from the shops. These guys are basically grocery shopping, no different to the way anybody else does. It'd be no different on a dairy farm. Those guys are up at 3 o'clock in the morning, getting the cows, which are normally lined up at the gate already because the cows want to get rid of their milk. And these guys work their asses off, basically for around about 4 or 5 hours milking these cows, and then it's another 2 or 3 hours to clean the cattle, clean all the areas out, where they might go back and actually have breakfast at about 11 o'clock in the morning, and then they're back at it again at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So, and it's that job alone is pretty much non-stop. They do not stop. So, there are no holidays taken. There's no breaks. And all to make sure that you end up with your cheese in the supermarket, or your milk, or your cream, or what have you. They honestly work like nobody's business. All for maybe 15 cents a litre. It's an incredible amount of work that they've got to do. And then they've got to basically make sure all the machinery is working, make sure it's all kept up to date, make sure it's all maintained, because it's working twice a day. To be a farmer is not a job that everyone sort of grows up and goes, "Ooh, I wish I could be a farmer." No. And most farmers I know, by the time they're 60, they've got crook backs, they've got crook legs, they've got crook arms. It's a pretty stringent type of job that you've got to do. So yeah, that's farming. So then we come to, I'll jump to prepping, because that's what most of us have started, and most of us got into it pretty much during COVID. That's your bug out bag. That's getting a little bit of extra food. It's about gold and silver, crypto, if that's what you're into. It's about preparing for something that may or may not happen. No different to getting car insurance on your car. You're getting car insurance because you may end up in an accident. You wear a seatbelt because you may yet crash. So you wear your seatbelt. You get car insurance. These are prepping items. As much as we sort of don't think of that, that is exactly what they are. So prepping is fairly basic to a certain extent. It's pretty much trying to live off the land to a certain extent as well. So, I won't go into all the details about my setup, but I am set up. And it gets back to that whole, do you want to bug in or do you want to bug out? I would suggest to the majority that they don't bug out, because living out here, yeah, sure, it's great to come camping. I love it. I'm set up for it. Would I want to live out here? Hell no. But I would if I could. I would if I had to. So if the situation was that dangerous, yes, I would live out here. Would I want to? Probably not. I would rather live in a house. Simple as that. Why? Because you've got a warm environment, and you can make a house very warm without air conditioning or without a fire or something like that. A house is also good because it's got plumbing. There's a toilet there. And trust me, when it's pouring down with rain, I can run to the toilet that I built, but I'm going to get wet and it's going to be cold. And trying to dry yourself off afterwards, not great. So camping is one of those things that is absolutely awesome, and I would suggest a lot of people do it, but it is not the place where you want to live. So the whole idea of bugging out is not a good idea for those that aren't prepared for it and aren't ready for it, and no one is, trust me. Bugging in is a whole lot better, and that's where you start getting into what do you need to do to bug in? Well, sure, you still got your bug out bag, don't get me wrong, but you can grow food. If you've got a little garden area, well, you can grow food. Is it going to feed you for 12 months? Hell no, everyone knows that. But that's why you're still prepping. You're still grabbing those extra bits and pieces at the supermarket. You're rotating those food stocks. You're making sure your medical's all up to date. You're doing all those things that a prepper does. But is it homesteading? Hell no. So homesteading sits between the idea that you could bug out within 5 minutes, right? And don't get me wrong, homesteaders are set up for bugging out as well. But homesteading is more, we're going to live this out only on this farm. But is it a farm? No. Normally, homesteading is something around about the 2 to 3 acres, which sounds like a lot for anyone who comes from an apartment. It's like, oh my God, look at all this space. For anyone who's been on a farm, they're just laughing at you. It's hilarious. It's like, that's not even a tenth of what half the paddocks are out here. In fact, where I'm actually sitting is probably sitting on about an acre, just where my campsite is. So, it seemed 2 to 3 acres seems like a lot, but it's actually not. And it really comes down to how you set it up. A lot of people talk about permaculture these days. It's certainly not big enough for a tractor, although you can get toy tractors, what we call toy tractors these days. But, depending on the terrain and the environment that you're actually in, it's even a toy tractor is probably too big. Ride-on lawnmowers or a little sort of electric cart or something like that is probably more along the lines. And in fact, a ride-on lawnmower is actually perfect because not only can it mow the lawn, but it can actually be used to tow something. So 2 to 3 acres is basically your ride-on lawnmower / I'm going to tow a little trailer or something like that to put all my bits and pieces in, or to collect the firewood, or to do whatever I have to do. It's homesteading is one of those things that it becomes so well. So I'm just going to jump into something quick. So let's look at most people work, right? So a prepper works. A prepper works full time. Goes to a job at 9 o'clock in the morning, finishes at 5. Comes home, does a little bit of sorting, but then sits down and watches TV with the kids or the wife, right? A homesteader wakes up before most people are even thinking of getting up, does about 2 or 3 hours worth of work, then comes back to the homestead, gets ready for work, goes off and does their 9 to 5 job, and it could be an hour's drive to work, hour's drive home. So, that's 10 hours a day gone. And then once they're home, they'll do more work. They'll do work until probably around about 8 8 o'clock, 8:30, whatever time suits you, depending on the weather. Homesteading work doesn't just stop because it's raining outside, doesn't stop because it's too bloody hot outside. It always demands your attention. And anyone who's listened to Chance sort of talking while he's weeding and doing a whole bunch of other stuff knows exactly where I'm coming from. The work doesn't stop. Because again, there's always fences to fix. There's always gardens to water. There's always weeding to do. There's always little odd jobs that basically pop up. And unless you deal with them, they just add up and they add up and they add up. So homesteaders tend to sort of get up early. They go to work, homesteaders tend to get up early. They go and do a couple of hours around the homestead. Then they go to work, and then they come home, and then they go out and do a few more hours on the homestead. And then they go to bed, totally friggin' exhausted. And then on the weekends, it just becomes all those jobs that you saw running around the homestead during the week are basically added up. And you've got to keep on top of them because you're dealing with 2 to 3 acres. You've got seeding to do, you've got planting to do, you've got netting to do, you've got fencing to do, you've got maintaining your tools to do, you've got all these other jobs that somehow add up, and it's not bloody easy. There is a massive difference between homesteading and farming. Homesteading, you're still working a 9 to 5 job. Farming is a 9 to 5 job. Well, it's actually probably a 6 o'clock till midnight job, depending on what season it is. So there is a huge difference between homesteading and farming, a massive difference. And it's not just in time. That's the thing. It's also a cost difference because the machinery, like I said, combine harvester, $1 to $2 million. Tractor, and I mean a decent tractor, something which is going to be able to tow all the implements that you're going to have, is probably around about $500,000 to $700,000 if you're lucky. All the implements, they're $300,000 or $400,000 each. So your seeder, your spreader, your rollers, your cutters, everything, all these different implements that you have to put on the back of your tractor to get your crop grown are about $300,000 to $400,000 each, let alone buying the farm in the first place, which is probably around about, $2 to $3 million. But it is your full-time job, and that's all you do. And whether you're cropping, whether you're livestocking, even sheep cost a lot of money. You've got to buy the sheep, you've got to buy the rams. You've got to truck the rams to market. You've got crotching to do. You've got vaccinations to do. You've got shearing to do. All these things. And then you need the sheds to be able to do it all. And whether it's them or cattle are just as bad. Cattle take a lot of money to deal with. Then you've got your vet bills. And then you've got the issues with birthing. Because if a heifer decides to give birth to twins, and she's struggling with it, you can't afford to lose that heifer. You need that thing basically producing at least 2 or 3 offspring a year for you to make any sort of money at all. So your vet bills are horrendous, but most farmers end up becoming vets. They become mechanics, electricians, carpenters, all these other jobs, and you wonder why, because they're virtually trying to do all of this on sort of money that most people would look at and just go, is that all you made? Seriously? So yeah, there's a massive difference between prepping and homesteading, between homesteading and a farm. And they're probably the biggest differences that I can think of just running off my head. So, for anyone that's homesteading, man, I salute you. The amount of work that takes is huge. And if you've got a hobby on top of all that, I don't know where the hell you're fitting the time. I really don't. you've got to be exceedingly organised, and you know, then you've got to figure out what grows, what doesn't. 2 to 3 acres might not be enough money to, might not be enough room to run animals and livestock. You know, unless you're exceedingly well organised with your crop rotations. You know, because then once you introduce animals, then you've got to introduce livestock feed and all the rest of it that goes along with it. So, you know, it is a lot to sort of take into account. And yeah, but I think I'll leave it there. I could probably go for hours and hours and hours. But I will leave it there because I'm watching 2 satellites go across the sky, and the sky is very clear tonight. Well, actually 3 satellites now. So I'm going to get a drink and probably another jumper because it is starting to get a bit chilly, and I probably need to throw another log on the fire. So yeah, this is Damien on Friday, the 10th of July, and I probably will, like I say, upload this on Sunday. So, yeah, I'll probably do another couple of videos and a live in between, but we will see how we go. Otherwise, signing out. Have a great weekend, guys. And I'm sure I'll catch you probably tomorrow. Time for some music, I think. Catch you later. Bye. And just before I sort of say goodbye, just to make you feel a little bit warm. Definitely time for more timber. Okay, catch you later, guys. See ya.